Looks like a lot of money, doesn't it? Look at that. Look at this bling. Like, look at that bling, man. Look at it. Do you see this? So much money. Okay. So, what is on the $100 bill? Well, or what is on the $5 bill? Let's look at this one. So, what you have is on the $5 bill, right here. Hold on. This is kind of hard to point to because my hands are reversed. But right here it says Federal Reserve, right? And then over here, signed by the U.S. Treasury. So just a little bit, because I talk about the Federal Reserve and I talk about the U.S. Treasury. The Federal Reserve owned privately by private people, so you never get to see in. You never, it's so secretive that not even the president himself can go into the Federal Reserve or inquire about the Federal Reserve and what is going on in there, you know, and how much money they're printing and this and that. So, but the U.S. Treasury is owned by the taxpayers, essentially. So there's a huge difference. The U.S. Treasury is public, so it's government owned. So therefore, there's inspectors and there's people that are have to open the doors, right? Open the floodgates to scrutiny and different things. And so, for those of you who don't know the difference between what a private and public institution is, the difference between the two, you know, private is privatized, you know, guys in suits, basically, right? They're private. The taxpayer doesn't fund them. So, you know, and those are the people who print our money and who are responsible for our money. So, by the way, this money here, this is fake. This is not real money, by the way. This is all play money. See? See right here? It's play money. It's actually prop money. It's movie prop money my buddy gave me at work. So it's pretty interesting. I mean, I have $10,000, but it's fake, so I can't really use it. But oh well. Anyway, so I just got done. I wrote like 2 chapters this morning, and I'm not sure what I want to talk about. I want to talk about how social dynamics have changed a lot. Now, for you guys who follow my show, you guys know that I followed a guy named Jaron Lanier, who has been a huge inspiration to me. I've watched almost all of his lectures that he's given at Stanford and Berkeley. He's a computer scientist who helped develop virtual reality and worked on Microsoft Connect and different stuff like that. So for you guys who follow the show, he's been one of my biggest influences. And you guys can look at him if you guys look him up on YouTube. His name, again, is Jaron Lanier. And just watch some of his lectures and what he talks about. Basically, he's your, you know, if you could imagine a guy sitting in a control room with the lights dim in front of a computer screen for 20 years, you would think of a guy that looks like him. So, and he looks like a computer hacker. Like, he's got the long dreadlocks, and he's got different stuff. I wish I had a way to pull him up on the screen. I would show people. But he's been one of my biggest influences. And this, thank God for the internet, because this information would have never come to me. I felt trapped for a long time. And I wondered why I felt the way that I did. And when I came across his lecture on what is happening in society today, I was amazed. I couldn't believe how right he was. And so when I stumbled onto his lectures, it was like a light bulb went off in my head. So I just couldn't believe it. And I started to realize what was happening in society. Now, if you guys follow what I write about, I write about something called the hive mind, which I stumbled across watching one of his many lectures where he talks about the hive mind and what the hive mind is. And you guys know I talk about the hive mind a lot, which is if you push a certain narrative in media for a long enough time, basically, whether people truly realize it or not, they're being manipulated, and you can control a population that way. You can get people to think a certain way after a certain amount of time. And you can do it in a subtle way as to they don't realize that they're being manipulated, but they are. And it's there. That's what's happening in society. And in fact, gender roles, where they used to just focus on race or societal violence and upheaval, they'll never focus on class because that is taboo. They will not focus on class warfare, but they will focus on race warfare, and now it's gender. So gender is the new thing. So now they want men and women fighting amongst each other, right? Which I think says a lot as to where the American family is today. If there is such thing. I look at the younger people now, and I mean, this is the American breakdown of the family is just terrible. I mean, I don't even want to get involved with these women. I see them, I see these bar stars and even the lawyers and different things like that. And they're very gynocentric. Now, we do live in a very gynocentric world. The Western world worships women. And the thing is it's not women in general, but it's just feminine. So the Western world worships feminine ideology. It's not necessarily women, because a woman can be masculine. So it's not necessarily women that I'm talking about. It's feminized version of men and women. This ideology that is enveloped through the use of media, and it's a form of control. I must say, it's a way to put your strongest males, right, your most disagreeable males, into a cage, into a box, so as to not create, a narrative that would go against the 1%, that what the corporate controlled state wants, right? So any narrative that the corporate controlled state doesn't approve of, they want complete control over that, if that makes sense. It's a top-down effect, right? So the 0.1 of the 1% who owns 90% of the world's wealth, their narrative it's a top-down effect. Whatever their narrative is essentially what is happening. And so we have a society now where there's all these kings and queens, all these princes and princesses of these corporations, the CEOs, the chairmen, your financiers, the CEOs. They're almost like little kings and queens, right? They're almost like little princes and princesses of their own little city, right? Their own little civilization. They rule over their own civilization, right? So that's where the world is at now. And instead, where it used to be an actual king and queen, now it's like a corporation, right? And so it's a top-down effect where the 0.1, the 1%, whatever their narrative is, it's pushed on the rest of us. And so when you go fill out a job application, they're going to ask you, what is your race, right? They're going to ask you, what is your gender? This and that, right? Correct? Affirmative action, this and that, da, 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 da. You're going to see it when you go out into the world. And so it's there, okay, is what I mean. And so this is a narrative that's being pushed, and you're not going to be able to work unless you sign on that dotted line. And so that's where we're at as a society. It's a top-down effect. It's a feminized version, and it's these little kings and queens of these corporations, and that's where we're at as a society. And I must say, I mean, I don't think it can go on very much longer. Now, they want to sit there and act like the markets are doing great, job growth is great, unemployment is great. Yes, okay, it is. Maybe it is great, but the numbers are not true. The unemployment numbers are not true. I know that for a fact, because what has happened is they've created these temporary jobs in which you can never get laid off from. So they've created a system in which you can't get laid off from. And so that skews the unemployment numbers. So these unemployment numbers are not real. Okay, none of the numbers are real. They're all fake, all of them. Donald Trump was right. It's rigged. He was right about that. That's one of the most truest things a president has ever said about the society in which he's benefited so greatly, and the rest of us have not benefited so greatly. He said it's rigged. He could run on just that alone, because essentially the American society is rigged, and it's skewed in a way to now it's very feminine, whereas in the 40s and the 50s, society was very masculine, because they had to be masculine because they had to fight wars, right? Men fight wars, women create, right? So men fight in battle and women create, right? And so in the 40s and the 50s, we had to fight a war. So American society was very different. I hope everybody realizes that. Very masculine, and the women helped out in sweatshops, and the women helped the men fighting overseas, right? Any way that they could. They helped in intelligence. A lot of women helped in intelligence, and it's just it's so strange to see the transformation of what we were and what society's turned into, man. We've turned very feminine. Okay. Men have turned very feminine. Women are feminist or gynocentric now. And you see it on the TV. The very act of selling somebody something is a feminine act. The very act of materialism in commercials and advertising is a feminine act. Now, I'm not saying women. I'm saying feminine. Okay, two parts, right? One part masculine, one part feminine, right? Day and night, positive, negative, two parts to everything, right? So yin and yang, right? And so when you look at the world through that lens, you start to realize what is happening, and why this benefits the top 1% is because the top 1% have 90% of the world's wealth. Therefore, they can have anything they want. They don't know what else to spend their money on. We haven't seen income inequality like this since the Gilded Age. And that was a time in which Rockefeller, Carnegie, J.P. Morgan, guys like that started the Industrial Revolution. That was around 1870 to 1900. So we're going back into that direction. If you believe in patterns and you go and see patterns throughout human history, you see patterns like this. And that's where we're headed, guys. This is nasty. This is dangerous. And okay, it's fine to be optimistic, but to sit there and be optimistic and just dumb when you should be at least a little skeptical of the future, you're naive. So to be naively optimistic is to be dead. To be naively optimistic is to be destroyed. The pessimists were the first ones to leave Germany and come over to America when they realized before the Nazis took power and took them in the concentration camps. The pessimists, they were the first ones to escape. The people who stayed were the optimists, the people who were naively optimistic and who sat there holding hands in a circle and prayed for peace. Those were the people who were sent to the concentration camps first. So we could sit here and be naively optimistic, sing Kumbaya, and say, peace, 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 peace. We can do that, but that's to be destroyed. Those people are the first ones to be destroyed. So I'm just giving you a point. Okay, to sit here and hold hands in a circle and sing Kumbaya and to pretend like everything's fine when it's not, that is counterproductive. So I hope everyone understands this, that the fate of society rests in the next few years. And I'm telling you, it's going to get darker. With the breakdown of the American family, the breakdown of the values, the breakdown of the virtues, the breakdown of integrity in and of itself, through digital networking, through monotonous structure, through societal norms. Just look back to the 80s. Look back to the 90s. And look at where we are now and how much has changed. I think you guys would be shocked. Now, one of my biggest influences was a guy named Jaron Lanier, although I don't agree with him politically. You guys can look him up on YouTube, and I think you guys should watch some of his lectures. You will understand what is happening in society, and that you're being controlled, that you're being programmed, and women especially are being programmed. Women are the most susceptible because they're agreeable. They are the first ones to fall. Men are more disagreeable than women. Women conform first. Okay? And so if you understand digital networking, if you understand stuff like the hive mind, you see the people who are more likely to be controlled are women and feminized men. Blue-pilled men. I know how it was, man. When I took the blue pill, when I was blue-pilled, I was blue-pilled for 30 years. And I didn't understand why things were working out the way they did. And I didn't understand why I never got my way. Every time, stuff didn't work out. Stuff didn't work out in my personal life. Stuff didn't work out in my professional life. And I just kept losing. And I realized why. And I took that red pill. And it woke me up. It took me out of that daze. Took me out of that sleep. And so I want to help everybody else out here and wake up to what is happening and what society is destroying itself. And the top 1% are pushing a narrative on the rest of us, and we're going along with it like ants to the watering hole, like ants to the you know, to the ant hole, working simultaneously, working in line, working in groups. You know, we need a couple people to realize and to teach others. The rise of the state. You guys know what I think about government. You guys know what I think about the state. You guys know what I think about drug enforcement laws. You guys know what I think about the DEA. Um, the Americans worship the state more than any other society that I know. Now, in every society, every communist society, every fascist society, you worship the state, and that's what Americans do. Americans do. They worship the state, right? Through media. Only this time, I say, we live in an inverted society now, in which racism still very much exists, sexism still very much exists, but it's inverted. It's flipped around. That's why you have to answer your race. That's why you have to answer your gender when you fill out an application. That's why they ask you. That's not why you answer. It's why they ask you for race. It's why they ask you for gender, because we live in an inverted racist society, an inverted totalitarian state that's controlled by the few, the kings and queens of these corporations, and it's a top-down effect. So everybody else gets corrupted, especially the 10% below the 1%. So that the percentage of the population in the high 90s, they get corrupted especially because it feeds their likelihood. It feeds their ambitions. And but the majority lose. And so it's a top-down effect, controlled by propaganda, controlled by the kings and queens of these corporations. And something's going to give, guys. I mean, things are not as good as what they seem. Just to be clear, and to be naively optimistic is to die. You need to be realistic and to have a little bit of pessimism. Because to stand in a circle and sing kumbaya and pretend like everything's okay is just to be naive. You're naive. You don't live in the real world. But anyway, yeah, this is not real, by the way. This is play money. So, okay. Hey guys, leave comments below. I really want you guys' opinion on this, on some of the stuff I talk about. One of my, several of my big influences. One of them is Jaron Lanier. Another one is a guy named Stefan Molyneux, who talks about philosophy, talks about Socrates, Aristotle, the role they played, Plato, and how philosophy is now needed more than ever in society. We're going to talk about things that they don't want you to talk about, that they don't want you to know, that you'll never learn in school. That's what we're going to start talking about on my broadcast, guys. Please weigh in. I want to hear y'all's opinions on things. I'm going live here. We're going to keep going live. We're going to discuss the destruction of the American family and reverse gender roles and how it plays on mental health, how it plays on kids' health, how young boys don't even know what they should be, how to act, because they live in a feminized culture, a feminized world, in which that runs on feelings and emotions. So when the boy gets older and realizes things aren't working out the way they want to, he reacts. He acts off emotion. He reacts because he has no father figure to sit there and tell him, son, you don't act like that. That's not right. If you act like that, you get thrown in jail. Don't do that. Right? So that's where we're at as a society. So I'll speak on this some more in the future, guys. leave some comments. I'd like some feedback here. What do you guys think of the breakdown of the American family and the reverse gender roles?